Okay. Okay. So it's amazing going through the series that we were learning through Derech Hashem. So we actually left off one paragraph right before what I would like to do now, starting for Pesach. So I guess I have to turn off the sound over here. So we ended up, for those of you who are following along with Derech Hashem Shir, so Mitzrayim, we're going to continue after Pesach. So we're going to go back over this quickly again as part of that Shir. So for those of you who have the Sefer with you, or if you want to find it online, so the text is available all over the place. So we're in Sefer Derech Hashem, Chelek Dalid, the fourth Chelek of the Sefer. This is the part of the Sefer where the Ramchal focuses on the specifics of our avoda and how the whole concept of shleimus and chisaron and yichud Hashem and the he'elem, the hiding of the yichud of Hashem, how all of that is the central theme of the world and the Torah, and how each part of our avoda fits into that scheme. So we started Perek Daled. It started with the idea of learning Torah, and we spent a lot of time on the concept of the mitzvah of limud HaTorah. And then it switched into the mitzvos maisios, like the actions of the mitzvos. And the first one was the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, and why we have the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema every day, and the concept of proclaiming Hashem's yichud. So we got up to Sif Zayin. We finished through Sif Zayin, which was explaining the whole beginning of Kriyat Shema, as well as the Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Li Olam Va'ed. So all of that was explained in the previous Yurim. So if Ches, the number 8, so we're going to be skipping that for now. That's explaining what the Parsha Rishona of Shema is about, the V'ahavta, what are we supposed to be getting from that Parsha. And then we're skipping now to Tes, to number 9. So we're in Perek Dalid, Chelek Dalid, Perek Dalid, the fourth Chelek, the fourth Perek of the fourth Chelek, and number 9, letter Tes. And this is where the Ramchal explains in the context of Kriyat Shema, because that's where we have the mitzvah of remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim every day. Right? We know there's a difference between the mitzvah daily. We have a mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim, remembering, recalling the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim, as opposed to Leil Seder. We have a mitzvah special one time a year of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, not just remembering the leaving of Mitzrayim, but we have a mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, telling over that story. And of course, that's the Seder night. And hopefully we're going to get to see the Ramchal sometime later this week or next week, at the beginning of the week, early. Meretz Hashem, hopefully we'll go through the Ramchal on the Seder, and he explains how the different aspects of the Seder, the different parts of the Avoda of the Seder, how those are all working to do the tikkun of Yetzias Mitzrayim. But for now, we're going to be focusing on the daily mitzvah of remembering Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim, because again, even though that's not the special mitzvah of Pesach, but obviously the whole concept of Pesach is built around Yetzias Mitzrayim. And our daily interaction with the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim comes through Kriyat Shema and this mitzvah of remembering. So let's see what the Ramchal has to say about this. And in the context, again, we're going to see how the Ramchal sees the whole idea of Mitzrayim and the leaving of Mitzrayim and the significance of that, and how that fits into the whole picture of Shleimus and Chisaron and everything else that the Sefer is dedicated to. Okay, so we're again Chelek Dalid, Perek Dalid, Seif Tes. Achar kach, after the first two paragraphs of Shema, the V'ahavta and V'haya. Achar kach mekabel olav ol mitzvos. Oh, I'm sorry. After V'ahavta, then is kabbalas. That's being mekabel, loving Hashem. Then V'haya, that V'haya im shemoa, that's the schar v'onesh. That's remembering the concept of that we have an ol of the mitzvos. V'achar kach maskir Yetzias Mitzrayim b'parshas Tzitzis. So, and the third piece of Shema is the paragraphs is the Vayomer, the third paragraph that we say, and in there we have the idea of tzitzis and the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Okay, so now he's going to explain to us why Yetzias Mitzrayim is such a fundamental idea, such an important idea in the hashkafa of Klal Yisrael, that we're required to remember this every single day. V'hainu ki hine Yetzias Mitzrayim hayatikun gadol Sheniskenu bo Yisrael, Yetzias Mitzrayim, this event, this epic series of events that took place that culminated in Klal Yisrael leaving Mitzrayim. So there was a massive tikkun. There was a huge tikkun, which is going to explain to us in a second. There was a huge tikkun to Klal Yisrael. We were fixed through this process at a high level. V'nishar hadavar lanetzach, and this remains forever. There's a certain change, a certain shift that happened at Yetzias Mitzrayim, that our neshamos, the neshamos of Klal Yisrael, changed through that process, and that tikkun remains forever. We know that there's this concept of the year, the cycle of the year. They say it's not like a cycle; it's like a spiral, and every time when you go past that time in the year, so you can tap into the tikkun of that time of the year, right? And any of the big historical events that took place, they're all in line with the spiritual times of the year that these things are supposed to happen. Like we explained, the whole month of Tishrei is all about the din and the gvuros, and the whole month of Nisan is all about chesed, and all of the avodah that we do here revolves around that concept, right? But the tikkun that we tap into every year, Pesach time, the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the time of the year is a time where this tikkun is in the air, and we can tap into it. V'nishar davar lanetzach, and the tikkun that we received in Mitzrayim by Yetzias Mitzrayim remain forever. V'hainu. So what was the fixing up of Klal Yisrael that happened through this process? V'hainu ki me'achar cheto shel Adam harishon, from the times of the Chet of Adam Harishon. And we know the idea, the way the Ramchal lays it out for us, that Adam Harishon really was the whole world, the whole universe was created for him. The whole Nisayon of man needing to struggle to recognize Hashem, and the ability for man to not recognize Hashem, all of that was wrapped into the Nisayon of Adam Harishon. And if he would have chosen to see through the Nachash, to see through the Yitzhahara, so then he would have achieved that tikkun, he would have fixed the world and achieved that tikkun and been with Hashem forever. However, he didn't. But since Adam Rishon didn't do that, so now we have a double layer of avoda to do. Now, number one is, we have to get back to Adam Rishon's mission, right? Adam Rishon had a mission that he failed, that still needs to be carried out. However, the failure made it much worse. It set us back now that we don't just need to be mashlim the world, but first we need to fix what's broken before we can even be mashlim the world. Adam Rishon's chet broke man and broke the world, and now we are in a state of needing to rectify that, of needing to fix it. Nishar and Yoshus kula mekulkol k'moshe kasavnu b'chelik aleph v'haya haram is gaber b'chulo. And from the time of Adam Rishon until the times of Mitzrayim, the Ra that had taken hold in man was gathering strength. It was like snowballing. It was building. So much so that Klal Yisrael got to a point, the people in the world got to a point that there was like almost nowhere good to take hold of them. The Ra had developed so much, right? From Adam Rishon down until the times of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Ra had taken so much of a hold that we were getting to a place where we were Khalila going to be running out of goodness to have in order to rely on that goodness to be able to bring out a tikkun, right? We were like running out of time, so to speak. Right? But wait a second, you say, but this already happened by Avraham. Avraham Avinu was, way before Yetzias Mitzrayim. So how can you say that, all the Ra of Adam was, mixed in with us, and there was almost no good to hold on to? What about Avraham Avinu? What about the Avos? We were already separated from the Ra, ostensibly by that time. Still, even though Avram Avinu, we had the schusim of Avram Avinu, and we had the promise of Hashem to Avram Avinu, which is why he couldn't let it get to the point that we would get so bad that we couldn't be brought back, let's say, right? But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to bring us to goodness on its own. Okay, so in Klal Yisrael's DNA, or however you want to put it, in our spiritual genes, there was a tremendous amount of Ra mixed in, and that Ra being a result of the Chet of Adam Harishon. And even though Hashem promised Avram Avinu, I'm going to keep your kids and we're going to make a nation out of you, that wasn't enough to prevent the Ra from taking hold. That was the promise Hashem made to make sure the Ra wouldn't completely take us over, right? But at that point, where we were by the time we got to Mitzrayim and Yetzias Mitzrayim, so the Ra had taken so hold of us, and the Zuama, like the darkness, the filth of Chet, had been so deeply ingrained in us that there was almost no place for the goodness to come in. So Hashem required us, the people, to go down to Mitzrayim and to be enslaved over there. And through that tremendous shibud, through that suffering, so the nation will be purified and cleansed. So I want to just explain this idea. We've discussed this in the past, both in Das Tunos and in the Pesach Shiurim that we've said in the past, that this idea of the descendants of Adam Harishon until Mitzrayim. We know this idea that the world went through a few cycles, so to speak, during this time period. We had Adam Harishon who failed, right, and didn't fulfill his tafkid. Then we had the Dor Hamabul, right? A number of generations later, 10 generations later, so we have the Dor Hamabul. So again, that was a generation that had the opportunity to make a tikkun. They could have fixed up what Adam Harishon had broken, however, they didn't. So the Dor Hamabul was wiped out, and we started again with Noach. And then we had the Dor Haflaga, right? The Migdal Bavel and the Dor Haflaga. So they were also a generation that had the ability to be misake, and they had the ability to fix up the Chet of Adam Harishon. And again, instead of fixing it, they dug us in even deeper. And the Dor Haflaga was scattered, and a third of it destroyed and taken care of as another sort of failed attempt at the tikkun of these neshamos. And finally, it came time to do it for us, so to speak, right? In other words, the leaving it up to us in the Dor Hamabul and the Dor Haflaga. So we didn't do it right. So Hashem is going to do it for us. So instead of us choosing to do the right thing and be metakein that Ra and uproot the Chet that Adam Harishon had embedded in us, instead of us doing it to ourselves, it was done to us. It was done to us in Mitzrayim. The suffering in Mitzrayim and the shibud, the state that we were in Mitzrayim was a state of being purified. It was the kur habarzel, the smelting pot, where you take steel and you melt it down. So melting it down is an extremely painful process. It takes a lot of fire, a lot of din, a lot of gvura to melt down that metal, right? But when you melt it, so then all the impurities separate from the metal, and you're left with a purified substance. And that's what happened to us in Mitzrayim. The 4/5 that got left behind, and all of the people who died and were killed, and all the babies that were thrown into the water, and the babies that were baked into the bricks, right? The Arizal writes that the water was to recall us of Dor Hamabul, that we had to make up for the Dor Hamabul. So there was water involved in our punishment. And the Dor Haflaga built their tower with bricks and mortar. So we also had to suffer through bricks and mortar. The whole experience of Mitzrayim was a cleansing experience for Klal Yisrael, just like on an individual basis. We all have our Yeridos to Mitzrayim. We all have our situations where we, have to get cleansed, and Hashem has to put us through stuff. Hashem puts us through difficult situations and sorrows and stress in order to cleanse us and purify us. So that's what was going on over there in Mitzrayim. And through this tremendous suffering, so we would be cleansed, and these neshamos could finally, come out and be on track to be misakein the chait of Adam Harishon, and that's who we are, right? That we are the leftovers, the good parts of those neshamos, right? All of those neshamos that went through all of those gilgulim, all of those cycles, being here in the world until Mitzrayim, until Matan Torah, when the purified parts of the purified neshamos made it through that process. So that's you and me. That's Klal Yisrael. We are the result of this cleansing. When the appropriate time came, when Hashem saw that the tahara had taken place, there was enough cleansing of the generation. So Hashem gave a huge infusion of koach, a huge infusion of shefa to Klal Yisrael. This is a critical point that the Ramchal learns through this whole time of Pesach, going through Matan Torah, that it wasn't just a leaving of Mitzrayim. It wasn't just that idea of, okay, we went down and we had difficulty and then we came out, but by going down and going through that difficulty, it separated us. It filtered us out, or filtered out the bad from us, so that what was left is the pure neshamos of Klal Yisrael. We were separated from the Ra for the first time, right? Since Adam Harishon, all mankind had this deep mixture of Tov and Ra, this deep mixture of this zuama, this spiritual filth that had infected Adam Harishon and infected all of the later generations, the following generations. And now by Yetzias Mitzrayim, for the first time, there was a group of people, right, that was going to become Klal Yisrael, that were spiritually separated from this Ra, right? We had it cooked out of us, right? We had it suffered out of us through the Yisurim of Mitzrayim. The Ra was separated from us. We were separated now from the Ra. We were made distinct. And they were elevated from this very low level, from this extremely bad place of shiflos, of ra, of zuama, of this mixture of tov and ra that was in us, and the suffering that we had to go through in order to get it out brought us to a very, very low place. And that geula that we had from that ra, it's a permanent geula. The geula that happened at the time of Mitzrayim is not a geula that was set back. For example, the Gemara asks, how come we don't say Hallel on Purim, right? So most people know the main answer, one of the answers given by them are that the Kriyasa Zuhilula, that the reading of the Megillah, that is Hallel, right? That's like saying Hallel when we lay in the Megillah, even though it doesn't expressly thank Hashem. Well, that's because the Nes didn't happen in an expressly Hashem-dik way. It happened in a Nister way. So we do like a Nister Hallel and lay in the Megillah. It's fascinating. We don't hold this way la halacha. However, there's one opinion in the Rishonim that says that on Purim, if there's no Megillah, let's say for whatever reason, somebody somewhere and they don't have a Megillah, so there's an opinion in the Rishonim says you say Hallel. Right? Because the Gemara says, well, why don't we say Hallel? Because the Megillah is Hallel. So if there's no Megillah, we should say Hallel. So certainly we don't follow that opinion, and we don't say Hallel ever. on Purim, because there's another opinion in the Gemara, and the other opinion says why don't we say Hallel on Purim? Not because of the Megillah. It says Akati Avdei Achashverosh Anan. We're still under Achashverosh. We're still under foreign rule. We're still in Galus. Right? The story of Purim happened in Galus, and fundamentally, we're not any different today. We were saved from Haman, right? But the Yeshua that we had was not a Yeshua Lanetzach. It wasn't a change that happened in Klal Yisrael that affected us. That we came out different than we came in. When it comes to Purim, because at the end of the day, we're still in the same state. We're still downtrodden in the world. We're still considered to be subjects of Achashverosh, if not him specifically, then the ruling parties of the world, right? However, when it comes to Pesach, when it comes to the Geula that we had from Mitzrayim, so that was permanent. Right, that was that separation from the Ra that took place at that time changed us fundamentally. That Ra was separated from us in such a way that it's never going to be put back into us and mixed in with us the way that it was before. Right now, we are Jews. Our neshamas are already separated. They're already distinct and different. Yeah, and from that point and further, we are considered to be Hashem's nation, considered to be Hashem's people, and we crowned with the glory of Hashem from the fact that we were purified and cleansed through Yetzias Mitzrayim. Excuse me one second. Okay. Right, this is a tikkun that is permanent. It was an everlasting change that happened. And all the good that happened and happens to Klal Yisrael from that point forward is all dependent on Yetzias Mitzrayim. We'll explain this out in a second. And so this is why the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim is so fundamental and so constant and so consistent. Why it is that so many mitzvahs seem to be dependent on this idea of Zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim. Because by every time we are doing a mitzvah that Zeichel Yetzias Mitzrayim, or remembering the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim, so we're being mechazik this inyan. We are like strengthening this idea, strengthening that separation, strengthening that havdalah, being mechazik. Like he explained, the or that came down, that was a shefa to Klal Yisrael, that pushed us apart, that separated us, allowed us to be separated from the Goyim, from all the other nations whose neshamos were mixed in with us. So that tikkun is nitchazeik every time that we are mechazeik the inyan of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Every time we focus on that distinction of how Hashem took us out, so that brings in the or of that distinction, umasmid banu hatoeles hanimshach min hatikun ahu, and it keeps it going. It keeps that tikkun, that elevation of Klal Yisrael, that separation of us from the other nations. It keeps it going. Masmid banu hatoeles. It makes it a consistent thing because we are consistently remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? So. The most basic idea, right? We know the concept of tamid, doing something constantly, means once in the morning and once at night, like the carbon tamid, is like that. Many other usages of the term. So therefore, right, we have a mitzvah of Yetzias Mitzrayim, zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim tamid, right? Once in the morning, once in the evening, to constantly. It's a constant cycle of remembering Yetzias Mitzrayim, focusing on that inyan of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and thereby bringing in the or of Yetzias Mitzrayim, bringing in that shefa that separates us, that elevates us, and keeps the tumah separate and out of our avoda. And so this is very interesting because where most of us have hopefully heard from me by now at some point, the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo, the famous Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo, which is Kedai to learn over Pesach. If you have any time over Pesach, it's a very important Ramban. And this is the one where he speaks about, he asks the same question, like, why is everything Zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim? So many mitzvahs that we have, Zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? Even Kiddush on Shabbos, Kiddush, which is, for remembering Ma'aseh Bereishis, but on Kiddush on Shabbos, we also say Zecher Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the Ramchal is explaining one aspect of it, right? That's because there's a tikkun that happens through this, through the remembering of Mitzrayim, through the focusing on that distinction that Hashem made. So that creates that distinction. It makes us separate, and we need to keep that hashpa'ah going. So therefore, we have many, many mitzvos that relate to Yetzias Mitzrayim, because it keeps us focused on this concept and then keeps that shefa going. We know the Ramban says a completely different idea. The Ramban says, not based on the shefa and what it's sort of doing in the spiritual realm. The Ramban says, it's just simply that the whole point of the world is for us to recognize Hashem, for us to see Hashem in our lives and believe in Hashem. And even Ma'aseh Bereishis, right? Hashem having created the world, if we don't believe that Hashem runs the world, we don't believe that Hashem is mashgiach on the world, so then our emunah in Bereishis is undermined as well, right? In other words, the emunah in Bereishis is not just that Hashem made the world, but Hashem made the world and runs the world, right? So where is the point in our history where the idea of Hashem running the world was hammered home so clear and so sharp and never to be questioned or misunderstood? So that was Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? When Hashem completely changed Teva, Hashem completely changed everything, and it was all prophesized in advance. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu told Paro everything that was going to happen, and that's what happened. So the Ramban says that the Yetzias Mitzrayim is like the hashkafic pinnacle of Klal Yisrael, because Yetzias Mitzrayim is like the place with a capital T, where we are focusing on the fact that Hashem runs the world. And therefore, even Kiddush, which is for Ma'aseh Bereishis, right? Shabbos, which is remembering the creation, that we remember the creation in the context of Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? We remember creation in the context of Hashem, who is still running the world and still keeping the world going. So you have these two different aspects, completely different, but really rooted in the same idea, that our constant reminders of Yetzias Mitzrayim and our constant focus on Yetzias Mitzrayim is a central part of our avoda, right? Whether, like the Ramban, it's our main focus of when we're talking about hashgacha, our main focus when we're talking about how Hashem runs the world and his power and his ability to do everything, or like the Ramchal is saying here, the idea of Klal Yisrael's uniqueness and Klal Yisrael's separation and specialness. So that's also something that was encapsulated in the Maisa of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and why we have that consistent and constant reminder. Now, what we're going to see, Hashem, like I said, next week, hopefully I'm going to do another one or two about this to try to understand, the mitzvahs of chametz and matzah. How does that have to do with this? And like I said, the mitzvahs of the Seder. But last year, I recorded this two shiurim, I think I did last year during the same time period, where I tried to explain, also based on the Ramchal and the Ramchal style of understanding, like a real more Kabbalistic Havana, a Kabbalistic understanding of the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and what was happening spiritually during this time that Hashem was separating us from the Goyim, like what was happening, so to speak, in Shemayim during that time, and how it is that all the mitzvos of Pesach relate to that dynamic. So like I said, there's another shiur that I'll maybe post a link to it, and we'll see a little bit more of that idea next week. Hashem, how all the mitzvos and all the different aspects of what we do on Pesach all plug into or relate to this specific Indian. of separating Klal Yisrael from the nations. Okay, very good. It's a little bit shorter this week, but we'll stop over here. Any questions? Anything else? Questions in general about Pesach or Pesach on Erev Shabbos this year? Anything? Okay, have a great Shabbos, everybody.